Morning. While I'm telling you all who we are and we introduce ourselves, y'all breathe. It's the last chance you'll get for about 7 minutes, okay? Breathe. Get a lot of air. I'm Rita McCannon. I'm a lawyer in Huntsville, Alabama.
Hey everybody, my name is Thomas Mackey and I'm in the History Department at the University of Louisville and the Brandeis School of Law here at the University of Louisville.
Good morning, I'm Jay Barth. I'm the Chief Education Officer for the City of Little Rock and a retired professor at Hendrix College where I taught American politics. Thanks for being here.
You are, please.
Hi, my name is Matteo Santoianni.
I am Hayden Young.
I'm Parker Rowan.
Hi, I'm Reagan Hurley, and we're all students at Raleigh Charter High School. Ms. Klein is our teacher.
I'm real Southern and I hear slower than you speak. Tell me what high school again?
Raleigh Charter High School.
Rita?
We're excited to hear from you. Let me read
Okay.
you a question. We're on Unit 3, right? Are we all in the right room?
Yes, we
Yes.
are.
Okay. Question number 1. I do think the United States would come to an end if we lost our power to, I do not think the United States would come to an end if we lost our power to declare an act of Congress void. I do think the Union would be imperiled if we could not make that declaration as to the laws of the several states. What impact has judicial review had on federalism? Is judicial review a counter-majoritarian practice? Please support your position. What limits, if any, would you place on the practice of judicial review? You may begin.
A feature of American federalism is the gradual shifts in power that occur between state and federal governments. The balance between the two has been changed by amendments in times of war, but what often influences these changes is judicial review.
For example, from its inception to the antebellum period, the Supreme Court often acted to increase federal power. We see this in landmark martial court decisions such as McCulloch v. Maryland and Gibbons v. Ogden, which transformed American federalism. However, the Supreme Court has also caused shifts in power from the federal government to the states.
After the Civil War and the 14th Amendment's limitations of state powers, the Supreme Court began to increasingly limit the use of federal power. For example, in the civil rights cases of 1883, the court found that Congress could not outlaw racial discrimination by private individuals. Similarly, in the slaughterhouse cases of 1873, the court favored states, ruling that the Privileges and Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment only protected federal citizenship. The court maintained this deference to state governments up until the presidency of FDR and the onset of the New Deal.
Early into the Roosevelt administration, the court invalidated several New Deal policies seeking to increase federal power. For example, in Panama Refining Company v. Ryan in 1935, the court voided an executive order issued under the National Industrial Recovery Act, which sought to limit the state's ability to transport goods. The court continued to serve as a roadblock to FDR's progressive agenda, eventually capitulating in response to Roosevelt's threats to pack the court.
In the switch that time had saved 9, the court became to undo many of its New Deal restrictions. For example, in Wickard v. Filbert in 1942, the court found that Congress had the power under the Commerce Clause to regulate individual economic activity within the states, even if it did not affect interstate commerce. Wickard was one of the first cases in the long run from 1937 to 1995 where the court did not invalidate a single federal law as being beyond congressional commerce powers.
However, the Supreme Court has recently ruled in favor of state governments, quite notably in Shelby County v. Holder in 2013, where the court struck down a section of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. This immense power to influence federalism in all other areas of government leads many to criticize the Supreme Court's anti-democratic potential.
Judicial review is inherently counter-majoritarian due to the structure of the Supreme Court. The court is an unelected body of 9 justices who are not accountable to the people. They have the broad power to override the wills of the president and elected representatives, as well as to make determinations of morals which may not accurately reflect public opinions. While we do not favor explicit limitations on judicial review, we do support several reforms on the Supreme Court as an institution.
Establishing a comprehensive code of ethics that requires justices to recuse themselves in conflicts of interest will bolster the integrity of the Supreme Court. In addition, by extending ethics laws already governing the lower courts, we can ensure that the Supreme Court adheres to its founding principles and constitutional duties. Furthermore, the use of recusal to maintain the court's impartiality will only increase the public's trust in the institution and mitigate the effects of bias within the court's rulings.
For example, prior to the case of Cheney v. U.S. District Court in 2004, Justice Antonin Scalia went duck hunting with then Vice President Dick Cheney. Although Justice Scalia refused to recuse himself at the time, declaring himself impartial, he may have been forced to recuse himself under a new code of ethics. Although this proposal is only tangentially related to judicial review, its effects will strengthen the court's moral authority and allow it to more effectively resolve issues revolving around the constitutionality of laws. Thank you.
I'll pop in and pick up on your last points about recusal, and that really focuses, of course, on individual justices and whether they should be involved. Are there particular areas of the law or types of cases where you think that judicial review should not be practiced?
In the past, there has definitely been a lot of different types of cases where justices have refused to rule on such things. These are issues such as social issues, but lately, since the climate itself has become a lot more political and a lot more polarized, the judges themselves don't really have too much of a choice socially to not rule on these cases, and so they're more forced to rule on these cases rather than they were in the past.
I drive my students crazy. My two favorite words are be specific. So Ms. Hurley, could you be a little more specific about what issues or topics or problems that you were referring to in response to my colleague's question?
Right, so the issues that I was speaking of are more social issues like gun control or abortion rights, things like that, or climate change.
Another issue that's added to the list, although the Supreme Court has ruled on it rather recently, is the issue of gay marriage and whether that should be protected under the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court has generally, in the past, before 2015, refused to really address that case, only ruling on it tangentially, and eventually ruled on it through Bergerfeld v. Hodges in 2015.
In addition, an area where I think the Supreme Court should really not go is political questions and things dealing with political systems. There was a Supreme Court case that came out of North Carolina, where we live recently, called Rucho v. Common Cause, where the Supreme Court was essentially reviewing our state voting districts. And in the run-up to that case, I was really worried that if the Supreme Court decided and thus struck down districts, people would view the court as having a partisan bias and not necessarily understanding the nuance and the constitutional law of their decision.
Yeah, let me jump in, and because I think part of what we're talking about here is an old concern going back to the 1790s and the founders and even the Federal Convention, and that's a fear of majority tyranny. And that part of what judicial review may or may not be about is a concern about majority tyrannies. Now, we could be talking about political majorities, or we can talk about minorities of all kinds. So help me understand the relationship of federalism, judicial review, and the fear of majority tyranny.
Well, judicial review is a counter-majoritarian practice, as we mentioned in our opening, and it serves as a check upon the majority, whether that's political majority or the public, and ensuring that the laws passed by the legislator and signed by the president and enacted by the executive are constitutional, and ensuring that they aren't overstepping and oppressing minority interests, which are protected through the Bill of Rights and further amendments.
Can you give me an example?
Yes, an example. I think Brown v. Board would be a good example, because the majority of people at that time in U.S. history, they wanted separate but equal. They wanted segregated schools, even at the expense and detriment of African Americans' individual rights, and the Supreme Court, acting as a very controversial minority, intervened and overrode the will of the majority to protect the rights of those peoples.
I think another example could be found within cases such as Roe v. Wade, in terms of, although very controversial, I think that the Supreme Court is serving as they are ruling in favor of abortion, the constitutionality of abortion, allowing it, and thus they are providing a check upon it. I think at the time a political majority who did not want abortion to be legalized. And although that's controversial even now, I think it served to limit the majority.
Okay, back to Rita, maybe.
I've been asking this. I'm trying to ask it in a clear way and not in a difficult to understand way. Senator Ted Cruz has written a book called One Vote Away. And he says in that book that one single Supreme Court seat can change history. Do you guys agree or disagree, and tell me why? Changing a single seat can change history.
I would agree with that interpretation, or with that statement. We see this through the very nature of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, the justices on the Supreme Court serve for life, or however long until they retire. And they are appointed by presidents who, once they are out of office, their impact by appointing those justices are still seen today. For example, President Nixon, and he appointed 4 Supreme Court justices, and that very much impacted our interpretation of the Constitution and the future constitutional rulings and interpretations from that very point. Even though he's no longer in office, he still has a very large impact, and those justices still have a very large impact, as they can change the very fabric of our democracy by ruling on our Constitution, which is the backbone of our democracy.
So Mateo, I'll pick up, and others, where do you come down on the issue of term limits for Supreme Court justices, if there is that power of one seat to really have that kind of impact?
I think having a term limit would definitely be more helpful to America itself. I know that North Carolina itself, the judges that serve on the court are required to retire at age 72. And I think if we were to put a similar thing in something in place in the US court, I think it would definitely help the justice be more connected to the people. And I think that's something that we really need, especially in this time, because some views of older justices may be out of date or out of practice. But if we were to institutionalize an age limit, it would definitely help us.
I strongly agree with Reagan. I think that one of the most important things for Supreme Court justice is to be in touch with the people, because they are not actually held accountable to that. They need to be able to actively, I guess, fight for what the people believe the Constitution is, not just what they believe the Constitution is.
I think beyond that as well, the Supreme Court also, believe term limits will reduce the impact that each Supreme Court justice has, and so ensures that no one person has undue impact upon our very democracy and our republic, and that by instituting term limits, it will help serve to help the Supreme Court be more accountable to the people and to become a better institution.
Finish your thought, please.
Sorry. I believe that adding term limits will help improve the institution itself, as it will ensure that it is not as far removed from the people.
Cool. Well, let me jump in here and say, look, this is big ideas here. These are ideas that are being struggled with by legislatures, judges, state judges, federal judges, the Supreme Court, of judicial review and its limits, the problem of federalism and the balance between state and federal power, counter-majoritarian issues, and of those folks can't figure it out. So of course we ask high school students to figure it out for us. So you did a really good job, what I think is a tough question here, in managing some of these ideas and issues. You mentioned a lot of case law, but maybe think about limiting the number of case law that you use for support, and then really driving it home using the best evidence you have. It speaks to my question of being specific there, taking a position, grabbing hold of the material and digging down in it a little bit more. I'm a prof, I always want more, so just take that what it may. So I thought that you were good on your feet. I thought you responded well to the tough questions. Nice job.
I want to throw out one thing. I'm a lawyer, and I hear things sometimes that jump out, and I want to know why. One of you made a statement, code of ethics will bolster integrity, as though it's going to be in the future. It would really be helpful if you had a little more explanation of that. I didn't know if you meant that there's going to be a code of ethics in the future that is not there now. I wonder sometimes how much background check they do on these guys and women before they place them in there, but I would hope they already have checked out their ability to go by the code of ethics and of the bar associations from which they come. But be sure when you throw a line in that you don't leave it hanging. You may be answering another one tomorrow with another group, and you may be able to catch that before you do. But I thought y'all all did a really, really great job. I agree about the cases. I would like to hear a little more about the cases instead of referencing them and saying, these cases apply to this, but then you don't tell us anything about them. So maybe less cases and more explanation. But I really, really thought you did a fine job, and I appreciated how you worked with each other, because you obviously have done that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I thought you really wove the answers to the three separate questions together very nicely. It was a single narrative rather than feeling very chunky and separate. And I thought that really showed teamwork, which is very, obviously the name of the game here. So great job in that respect. And I thought you were calm, cool, collected, and showed just really great talent. And so I appreciate that quite a bit. But I agree with the other critiques of my colleagues, but many more strengths than weaknesses for sure in terms of y'all's work.
Absolutely. So, okay. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Good time.
you.
Good
Yeah,
luck.
good luck with the rest of the day.
Thank you.